Back to the show, Craig Shelton. I'm still here out at Reliance Stadium, and I've switched it up. Now, this show today has been largely about what the ladies think. We got the show started off with a very unique Texans fan. Kim Davis joins us here. You folks have seen Kim many times here on the Cut, and welcome back on the show.
Always good to be here. Thank you for
Always
having me.
wonderful to have you here. We started the show today with a young lady who's an awesome Texans fan. She goes to all the road games, all the home games, travels, and she had a very unique perspective on the team. So speaking of unique perspectives, all of you folks know by now, by the time you're seeing this broadcast, the Texans were defeated by the Raiders. But that was hardly the story coming out of Reliance Stadium last Sunday. The story coming out of Reliance Stadium was the damn roof being closed during the game and open after the game. We're sitting here taping now on a beautiful day and the roof is open, but it was closed during the game. I'm jesting, obviously. The story coming out of Reliance Stadium was two things.
Right.
Well, I guess we have to bring it all back to one guy, though, Gary Kubiak. Pulling Case Keenum in the third quarter when it really didn't appear to be necessary to pull Case Keenum for a lot of reasons. We'll get into that. And then the little disagreement or dust up between Andre Johnson and quarterback Matt Schaub. I'll let Kim get us started on this line of conversation.
Well, first of all, let's start with the fact that Gary Kubiak thought it was necessary to take Matt Schaub out, take Case Keenum out and put in Matt Schaub. And so when we asked him about it after the game, he said because of some things that the Raiders were doing, and he just thought that it wasn't Case couldn't handle it. Basically, this is my paraphrase, but that's what he thought. And so it was the better thing to do was to put in Matt Schaub, who has handled things so marvelously prior to being snatched earlier in the season.
Of
so
course.
I don't really get that, but that was his decision. And the fans didn't agree. And I don't think that you coach to the fans or for the fans, but it was a little surprising to me that he would make that move. And so that was the first thing that happened. And late in the game, when the game ended, there was a little cross-up between, Schaub and Johnson. And I think you and I discussed it. I tend to agree. I don't have a problem with a heated exchange because if you are in the midst of an 8-game losing streak and no one is heated, then there is a problem. You got the wrong guys. And I mean, to see any energy from Matt Schaub is interesting, and I guess that could be refreshing. But really, what I would rather see from him is something that I don't think he's really capable of doing. And that's lead this football team. And that was surprising and disappointing to see that Gary Kubiak made that choice today.
Yeah, my viewpoint on it, and I'll get your response. And you folks are welcome to get in on the conversation. You can reach us on Twitter at Craig Shelton HMW. I'm sorry, Craig Shelton HMW, and Kim Y. Davis on Twitter. We'll be happy to field questions or comments about the line of conversation. My thing is, for me, there's nothing to gain for Gary Kubiak on any level by playing Matt Schaub at this point in the season. The Texans are going nowhere in regard to playoffs. When you look at the dynamics around the Matt Schaub contract, who believes Matt Schaub will be a Texan next year? No one.
He's gone.
Yeah, he's not going to be a Texan next year. So you've got this upstart quarterback who's shown you that he's worth taking a serious flyer on. By the way, you signed him. He's on your team, so you had to have thought early on before it was confirmed to us that this guy was something to work with, had some tools. Okay, he gets an opportunity. He plays 3 games. He shows he has some tools. He gets out there on Sunday. The team is lethargic on offense, as they've been really quite a bit in the second half, mostly since Keenum has been starting. The Raiders clearly came out to dial the blitz up, and he was struggling with that. I think, 154 yards or so in the first half. Not great numbers, but, he was out there competing, had put a touchdown on the board. Finally, Keyshawn Martin shows up with a special teams play. And then Gary Kubiak makes this strange move, brings in Matt Schaub, and you've been saying something to me all along, and I'm going to give you credit for it because I became a believer Sunday. A big part of this with Kubiak appears to be I have to be right.
Yeah.
I'm maybe going to fail my way. If I'm going to lose my job, and I get that. we're going to do it my way. My God, what about the 53 guys on the roster? What about your owner, your GM, the city of Houston, the people that fill up this stadium? What about that?
Well, here's the thing. I believe, and I do still believe that. I think it's almost as though it's more important to be right than be productive.
Yes.
But I don't even know if it's consciously I'm going to be right. I mean, this is a guy who said when they gave Schaub that contract, you know what, we can win with him. Let's keep him. We can win with him. And so you could win some games, but you can't win a championship with him. That's clear. And so as you said, this season is a wrap. If they win out, the best they do is 8-8. They're not going to win out. Okay, but if they just did, that gets you nowhere in the AFC this season. So you're not going to the playoffs. So if you're going to be doing what's best for the franchise, let's see what this Case Keenum kid has so we can I'm speaking if I'm the franchise, start to figure out how we move forward next year. Are we going to get a quarterback in the first round? We got to get a quarterback, but where do we get the quarterback? And what is Case role going to be? You've got to let him play through the rough spots. And so if there's some problems and some things he can't do well, or he's learning, because he's had 3 starts. This was his 4th start today. He's really been having somewhat of a historic start as a rookie. And if you look back at rookies who've started and how they have progressed, I mean, the great ones that I don't think you can really compare Case to, with the Andrew Lucks and the Russell Wilsons and the RG3s, and back in the day, Peyton Manning, they started much like Case Keenum. And so it is not uncommon for a young quarterback to be faced with a blitz and have a hard time picking up. That is what happens, but it's not an indictment on his ability. And so you do him and this franchise a disservice by pulling him for a guy that you know what he can and, more importantly, what he can't do.
I agree 100%, folks. That's Kim Davis. I like to call her the mighty Kim Davis because she's mighty. She's on her feet. You know, you could easily make a football argument that a game like the one we saw last Sunday versus the Raiders was an ideal game to keep Keenum in, because you want to see a kid deal with some adversity. And see, I see Keenum as the type that when you have escapability and it comes to you naturally, you know, that can play against you as well, is the reason why he's had a couple games with sacks in excess of 10, 15 yards, because that athleticism will tell you I can escape. And if you take the wrong angle and the wrong escape route, trying to escape, you expose yourself to even greater losses of yards. This kid needs an opportunity to learn how his skill set translates to this level, dealing with the type of speed he's seeing on defenses from defensive linemen. Forget about skill guys on defense. From defensive linemen and linebackers chasing him down. This would have been an ideal game to let this kid tough it out. And you know what? I had a type of confidence in what I've seen in him, is that he would have, at minimum, he would have taken a great learning from this game, because it's the type that's a big, fast, physical football team like Raider teams typically are. Not always great teams, but they're normally big and normally fast. And you saw Case having to elude front 7 guys, particularly linemen, that were really on his tail a little bit. Now, he did escape, but at the same time, I just feel that you've got to allow a kid to go through his ups and downs, how else are you going to properly evaluate Case Keenum? Because I don't buy into you have to draft a quarterback in the first round. See, I don't buy into that, because I know we've got a deep group of quarterbacks coming out, but there's no RG3 coming out. There's no Andrew Luck coming out.
There's not that class.
So you don't have to. And if you're drafting that high in this 2014 draft class, and a premier defensive player like a Jadeveon Clowney, you know where I'm going with this. You know what I'm saying? By the way, you can use a couple other good positions on defense. I don't know. You need to know that Case Keenum is a guy, because this may be a 2-3 year project, a minimum 2-year project. Maybe you turn your eyes toward a kid like Winston the following year. And you go for a defensive player. So I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, I tend to agree. I don't know that you necessarily need to get a quarterback in the first round, but what I do know is you need to figure out what you have on this team, and that there's no upside to putting in Matt Schaub. So now what do? We asked Kubiak after the game, so is Schaub now starting moving forward? I got to watch the film. So this is going to be a week-by-week thing? Who does that serve? That's ridiculous. He's been around this game way too long. He's smarter than that. And so it's like, really, what is that about? That's not productive. There's no point in it. I don't understand it. But granted, he's a coach, I'm not, but that just doesn't make any sense to me. And his explanation um, falls short of making sense as well.
The explanation from Gary Kubiak just didn't work for me. I want to talk more about the little dust up with Matt Schaub and Andre Johnson. Get your thoughts on how a team moves forward from that. Or is that an indicator that you have bigger problems and maybe it's time to move in a direction with maybe an even more aggressive tone to it as far as remaking the roster? I want to talk to you about that. And I do want to get a little bit more into how the type of feedback we got out of Kubiak. But what I want to do, in fairness, is let's let the folks see what Gary Kubiak had to say himself. We've got some footage of that in the Kubiak press conference, and we got some Matt Schaub in there also. We'll talk a little bit about what Matt had to say and Andre Johnson had to say about their little dust-up when we talk more about that. This is Kim Davis, folks. I told you, the mighty Kim Davis. I'm Craig Shelton. You are watching The Cut. We'll run to a break, and we'll be right back.